Many of you have asked me what I think about Kibbe's new book, David Kibbe's Power of Style. And let me just say, I have some thoughts. To be honest, I've been hesitant to film this video because there's probably a chance you might disagree with me. But I want to be honest, and I want you to really understand how I think. Kibbe has a loyal following, and I genuinely respect what he has contributed to our community. His technology has helped so many people feel seen, understood, and more confident in their appearance, including myself. But this book didn't quite land for me, and I think it's important to talk about why. Today, I'm going to walk you through what David Kibbe's Power of Style gets right, what didn't land, and how my own approach to styling differs. It's important to know that I'm seeing this through my own lens. Some of you might identify more with my way of thinking, and some of you might identify more with Kibbe, and that's totally understandable. That being said, let's unpack my thoughts about David Kibbe's Power of Style. Although this is going to be a bit of a scathing review, I'm not here to dismiss everything that Kibbe has done. There's several core ideas that I still believe he got right. Work with your body, not against it. This is probably the single most powerful idea in Kibbe's work. That your natural lines, proportions, and features are not problems to fix. They're innately beautiful elements of you. The idea that we can be inspired by our natural features and harmonize with them to elevate our natural beauty. He writes, "I firmly hold that as one-of-a-kind beings, we all come to this planet created exactly who we are supposed to be." The idea that there are no flaws, only unique characteristics, is empowering. And I think it's why many people are drawn to his system in the first place. I completely agree with this principle of working with your body, not against it. Yin and yang as aesthetic concepts. Kibbe certainly wasn't the first person to use yin and yang as aesthetic concepts. Women like Carol Jackson, Belle Northrup, and Harriet McJimsey came before him, but he brought these concepts into the modern conversation and popularized them. What makes this powerful is that the concepts of yin and yang create kind of a spectrum that allows for more nuance when analyzing your features. These concepts not only help to explain how and why you might relate to a particular archetype, but also allow for that natural variation that exists within each archetype, prioritizing personal identity over trends. I also agree with his emphasis on style over fashion. Kibbe sees style as something deeply personal and timeless. He says, "Your style will and must evolve as we all change through life. But because its foundation is based on your identity, rooted in your body and soul, it is not subject to the seasonal revamps of fashion." I completely agree. Your style can and should evolve, but it should grow with you in a meaningful or practical way, not solely in reaction to trends. Encouragement for creative freedom. Lastly, Kibbe makes an important point that your image identity, or in my way of thinking, your body type, is not your style. He writes, "One of the big misinterpretations of my work is the conflation of image identity with a certain look." Although we will talk about some contradictions to this claim in a minute, I agree that body type does not and should not dictate your style. Regardless of body type, there is no limit to your style expression. In fact, knowing your body type can often open up more creative options and help you master the execution of your desired style. Now, let's talk about where this book lost me. Lots of words, little value. Kibbe's language is very flowery, abstract, and often confusing. In an interview with Gabrielle Arruda, which I'll link below, Kibbe said, "It was very important for me not to have any filler. Everything that was going to be in this book needs to be there." And yet we get pages of personal anecdotes, stories about his mentors, his acting career, his marriage, and his musical taste. These aren't necessarily irrelevant, but they do feel like filler at times. His core ideas kind of start to get buried under these layers of metaphors and mindset work. It sometimes feels like he's tripping over his own words and struggling to explain his system clearly. His book focuses so heavily on mindset that the actual style recommendations are sparse. There are very few examples of clothing for the image IDs, no breakdowns of how to apply yin-yang balance, and very few visuals overall. And when visuals are included, they're often very bright and theatrical, not extremely helpful for the average person trying to build a wearable wardrobe. Ultimately, the book doesn't contain very much technical information at all. Unfortunately, the limited technical content that is included is entangled with contradictory explanations, theatrical flourishes, and a lack of clear structure, making it difficult to actually apply. Second, there are many contradictions. The biggest failing I see in this book is Kibbe's inability to call a spade a spade. He says he believes one thing, but in execution, he demonstrates the opposite. Stereotypes. A lot of pages in this book are dedicated to Kibbe distancing himself from the idea of body types. He says he doesn't believe in typing people, but he then gives us 10 stylized image identities, complete with rules, recommended silhouettes, and even nicknames. The image identity names themselves carry a lot of stereotypical baggage. Theatrical romantic is referred to as a femme fatale. Dramatic classic is hot powerhouse. Dramatic is the deco dynamo, and soft natural is the sassy cover girl. These imply aesthetic and even personality traits. It's kind of hard to say that sassy doesn't, point you in a specific direction when it comes to how you would perceive someone. By contrast, a body type approach focuses on the physical reality of how clothing interacts with the body. Then you can use those rules to your advantage or intentionally break them to execute your own unique artistic vision. I appreciate that Kibbe's trying to distance himself and his system from the idea of boxing people in, but his presentation of the image identity system still feels like a box. And if you strip away the personality or the aesthetics from the image identities, it feels like you're left with what is essentially a body type. This contradiction, the rejection of stereotypes alongside the presentation of what can only be described as a stereotype, makes it much more difficult to connect with David this time around. Honestly, it feels disingenuous. Objectivity versus subjectivity. Another contradiction within the book appears within Kibbe's discussion of the subjectivity of style. He says objectivity is a hoax, but then introduces hard and fast rules, and even admits to some objective elements. He says, first let's identify yourself. Now think of yourself as both a painting and a sculpture, color and form. So basically, we simply employ harmonious colors to your painting and complementary outlines to your form. We call your painting your season and your sculpture your image identity. The judgment of harmonious colors and complementary silhouettes must at least be relative in nature, if not objective. If these systems are purely subjective, they would have no value. Whether you decide to use the systems or not is subjective. Your sense of beauty may be largely subjective, but the systems themselves have objective and relative aspects as well. So of course I would say that subjective opinion is extremely important in personal style, but objectivity is not a hoax. He also discounts his own claim against objectivity by creating strict rules like, if you're over 5'6", you're automatically vertical dominant, no exceptions. Additionally, he indicates that women over 5'6" can only be 3 image identities: dramatic, flamboyant natural, and soft dramatic. This is just a bit wild to me. While I agree that the likelihood that a woman is one of these 3 types increases with height, and while it might be unlikely for someone over 5'6" to be anything other than these 3 types, I don't agree with a strict cutoff based on height. For example, I've worked with women who identify with the dramatic classic type that are 5'6.5" or 5'7". Strict height limits feel like a shortcut that sacrifices accuracy for simplicity. He also provides strict guidance on things like makeup, hair, and even how to shop. He suggests blunt haircuts for all women and requires that all makeup within a specific look share the same intensity. He even kind of seems to scoff at the idea of creating a look using clothing from multiple different stores. He says you should always shop for a full head-to-toe look within store. These are all objective rules that are quite limiting. Ultimately, I disagree with Kibbe when he says that objectivity is a hoax, and honestly, it doesn't seem like he believes this either. I believe that body type and color type contain useful, objective information. What you choose to do with that information is subjective, and style certainly should be subjective. However, there's core principles that we can use to create our subjective vision. Without an underlying structure of meaning, our style wouldn't be an effective form of communication. Objectivity exists, but style is a combination of objective, subjective, and relative elements. Now let's take a closer look at the technical aspects of Kibbe's updated method, the line drawing method. One of the key tools for determining your image identity is the line drawing exercise. This process involves sketching the line of an imaginary fabric hanging on the body. This is used to help determine your dominant line and your additional line. According to this new method, your dominant line will either be vertical or curve. Once that's determined, you can look for secondary traits like width or balance. This step-by-step method attempts to provide a more logical sequence for analysis, beginning with the largest observable feature, vertical or curve, and then narrowing down. However, the technical presentation of this approach is still frustratingly inconsistent. For example, in the vertical plus width diagram, the outline begins at the outermost point of the shoulder. In the vertical plus narrow diagram, the outline appears to start a few centimeters inward. While I can see the objective difference between the two figures, the inconsistency between the starting points makes the resulting shapes appear even more distinct than they would be in reality, which could cause confusion for someone trying to DIY their body type based on this book. The length of the silhouettes is also variable, with some hitting above the knee, some at the knee, and some below the knee. And he doesn't explain why. Kibbe also introduces narrow as a new descriptive characteristic in this book. While this could be seen as an attempt to clarify the differences between certain image identities, it's redundant and it actually over-constrains the problem. For someone who's not particularly narrow nor particularly wide and is over 5'6" but doesn't have curve, this person would be confused as to whether they are dramatic or flamboyant natural. This is over-constrained. Whereas if narrow is not a requirement for the dramatic, then that person can say if they are not wide, then they are dramatic. This would be properly constrained. The addition of narrow also does little to distinguish between types that have previously caused confusion due to overlapping descriptions, such as theatrical romantic and soft gamine, height cutoffs and their implications. As I've mentioned a few times, Kibbe formalizes the role of height more strictly in this book than in previous publications. As noted earlier, anyone above 5'6" is considered vertical dominant by default. He frames this cutoff as a time-saving measure, streamlining the process of elimination. However, it has significant implications. In practice, these height limits might not be accurate for every woman that's just above or just under this height threshold. For example, a woman who's 5'7" with balanced features may strongly associate with the dramatic classic type. But under this rule, that possibility would be excluded. Similarly, dramatic classic, flamboyant gamine, and all of the curve-dominant types are restricted to 5'6" and under, and soft gamine is even restricted to 5'5" and under. While these cutoffs might be true in some cases, I can't help but think they might be misleading for a few unlucky outliers. Incorrect color theory. Then there's his take on color theory, which I just want to touch on briefly. He insists that hair, skin, and eyes must always share the same undertone, which is just not true. This is why I think so many of you felt validated by the sister season concept. There absolutely are colors from neighboring seasons that you can look great in. Skin undertone is dominant in color analysis, and it determines the undertone of your signature season. Hair and eyes are secondary, and they contribute mostly to your intensity and contrast. Hair and eyes can therefore pull you towards a specific subseason and may relate to your sister season. So beyond all of the criticism, how do I use David Kibbe's technology, and what do I do differently? The short answer is I take what's useful from Kibbe and I leave the rest. I incorporate the concepts of body line analysis and yin-yang balance, but I aim to offer something that's clearer and easy to apply: the body type approach. Where Kibbe loses me is really his failure to admit that stereotypes are part of his system. While he spends a lot of time in the book trying to distance himself from stereotypes, actions speak louder than words. His system is still encoded with his own perspective on each image identity. My approach to body type is grounded in objectivity, line, structure, and proportion. I don't want to assign a persona. Instead, I want to help you understand how clothing interacts with your body so that you can use that information intentionally, whether that means highlighting your natural lines or playing against them to create a certain effect. I use body type to talk about physical structure. On top of that, you can use style words and other styling tools to define your specific aesthetic direction, embracing objectivity and subjectivity. Kibbe says objectivity is a hoax, but I disagree. I believe that style is a mix of objective, subjective, and relative truths. There are objective elements in your color type and body type. These are observable traits such as your contrast level, your undertone, or your dominant physical line. What you choose to do with that information is where the subjectivity comes in. Think of it like any kind of visual design. There are principles for composition, contrast, and color. But what you make with those principles is up to you. Where Kibbe leans into flowery language, I try to provide clear visuals, clear concepts, and clear examples. I believe people can be more creative when they have a strong understanding of the basics. That's why I share capsule wardrobes and real-world examples. I want you to see what it looks like to combine color type, body type, and core style into a creative yet functional wardrobe, so that you can do it for yourself. If Kibbe's approach works for you, that's wonderful. But if you've ever felt boxed in by the image identities, confused by the language, or unable to see yourself in any of his IDs, you're not alone. In short, Kibbe's updated framework has some useful ideas. But when you get into the details, the contradictions, inconsistencies, and lack of practical guidance start to pile up. Everyone's perspective on style is different, and everyone's perspective is valid. I think it's really important to forge your own path and also find sources of inspiration that align with your own way of thinking. And remember, body type or image identity or whatever you want to call it is only one part of your personal style. Speaking of that, if you'd like to inspire a capsule wardrobe example on this channel, each month I'll create a capsule wardrobe example inspired by one member of the Style Lab community. The selected monthly muse will be announced on the last Tuesday of every month. And of course, if you want to work with me one-on-one, you'll find everything you need in the description box. If you genuinely liked this video or found it useful, please give me a like and subscribe for more personal style and capsule wardrobe videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in this video next.